to another Warrior Wednesday. Let me hear your war cry. Oh my gosh. If you can't get excited about today, I don't know who you are, but let me tell you, oh my Lord. You don't know him, but he's an integral part of my life. The guest that we have on today was, he changed my life. He was actually my staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, and he actually it took a kind of a damaged kid and molded him into a United States Marine. And this guy, we all take different paths in our life, and we've stayed in touch over the years. And I went one direction, he went a different direction, and I think that it's so cool. It's so cool how everybody's journeys intertwine, But my guest today is Staff Sergeant Timothy VEDROS, and he is actually currently a hospice chaplain. I'm hoping that I'm getting that right, a deacon of sorts. But he actually does a lot of hospice work with cancer patients and amongst other patients, a lot of sick people. And so I wanted to bring him on today because I think that there's some misconceptions about hospice. I kind of, in my story, kind of vilify hospice a little bit, saying, I was sent home to die, and whatever. And it's very theatrical and everything. But, there is some value to different options that we have throughout our journey. So I think it's important to talk about, so any event, I just, that's the kind of setup I'm limiting the introduction just to let you know that we do have a history. He's a very important man in my life, and but I'll let him do the rest of the talking. Timothy VEDROS, how you doing?
Good afternoon. Very good to see you and get to talk to you again.
Yeah, well, you know what? I would be remiss if I did not, in full transparency, say that we do keep in touch, and you have been, well, not only an integral part of my life, especially in my adult life, but you've also been a pretty great part of my journey, throughout my battle with cancer. Kind of a spiritual beacon of sorts. Definitely somebody that you know me, you can always keep me in check, So yes, I just wanted to kind of just give you a little brief introduction so everybody knows who you are, and I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. Give yourself a little bit of background there.
Okay, so very well. So yes, as Kevin stated, we did work together in the Marine Corps for a couple of years, and we have maintained contact, especially when Facebook started out. And he actually found me and sent me a friend request on Facebook many years ago. And my response to him was, "Are you sure you found the right guy? Are you sure you want to be friends with me?" Because as a staff sergeant, as the leader, a lot of these young people don't necessarily want to be friends with their bosses or former bosses.
That might have been my wife.
So, and we've been able to maintain contact, and we talk, we've met, we visited, and it's always good to be able to get back and talk with him. So a couple of things. I am a hospice chaplain. I'm an ordained deacon in the Catholic Church, hospice chaplain, and that's what I do. I am also a cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with leukemia about 2 years ago, and did some radiation treatment. And from what I've been told, is it's all been taken care of, and I'm cancer free. 1 year in October. So I've been kind of following some of these posts, not all of them, but I follow and I read and I see. And myself and Kevin have talked about doing this podcast or this information a couple of times, and not that I didn't think I could offer anything valuable, but then just I was reading the other night, reading some of the comments that some of the people were posting, and then I reached back out to Kevin and told him, I said, so with some of the questions I'm reading, I think there's some information that maybe I can share that would be beneficial to some of the people in the group. And that's how we got to today. So that's my background. That's who I am.
Yeah, well, you know what? I even said, in the introduction there, I myself, I mean, I tell my story about how, I 3 years of treatment and I went through this torture, and then, after all the Western medicine was the options were exhausted, and all of the Western medicine had failed me. I was sent home to die. Dun, dun, dun. Like it was like and I said, and my appointment was coming with my social worker said appointment with hospice and blah, 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 blah. And, I mean, I I go through the story in my head over and over again, like it happens every day all over. And the 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 four-letter word that is not a four-letter word, but the bad word there is hospice. Like they sent me home to die on hospice. So I think that it's, even I, into negative condensation, like even when I tell my story, I emphasize the negativity, or the negative aspect of hospice. And I think that, that's not fair. I think that it's not fair. And, and I thought that it was important for us to have this conversation. Now, of course, I do want to say my all-time disclosure is that I'm not a doctor, and everything that we talk about here is just, a couple guys talking. But it's just kind of it's one of those things that I don't know that I I do a lot of research, and I'm just a United States Marine. I mean, we talked about that. We talk about it in every episode that I do. I'm just a United States Marine that I kind of operate under logic, and the research, and something tangible that I can feel and touch. And based on that stuff, I comprised a 5 ingredient cocktail that after all the options were exhausted, I I found a solution in repurposed medicine. And these 5 ingredients, fenbendazole, samidine, AHCC, curcumin, and annatto, those 5 ingredients, there's been a clinical trial in Western medicine done on all of them. That in concert they destroy disease. So that's the clinical treatment. So it's I'm not a doctor. I just use the research that the doctors provided. But nevertheless, I just I had to digress there for a second to throw that disclaimer out there. And but you know what? Instead of me rattling on here, can you tell us what is hospice?
So, and I'm going to share some information with everyone that's listening. Um, One of the first things that when I get introduced to a new patient, new family, and whatnot, one of the first things I try to reassure everybody about is way back in the day when when I was young, and we used to always hear about hospice. It was the end. It was I'm somebody's dying, and that was it. And so obviously, when you still get put on hospice today, I mean, someone's terminal and they've exhausted all of the treatments, but the quality of care that the hospice agency, especially, so I work for Haydell Memorial Hospice, and our office is in Houma, Louisiana. Um, One of the very first and most important things I can express to anyone either considering hospice or getting referred to hospice, get to know the people that work for the agency. you have to be comfortable with them. And if there's something that isn't right, you've got to ask questions. I'm going to share just a few personal items to help people to understand. So not only as a hospice chaplain do I get out and meet with patients and families and help them to walk in the spiritual journey, but a few months ago, I was able to experience the same thing as a family member, as my dad was placed on hospice. And not that, well, I was able to, sit back and watch everything from the time of the admission all the way until my dad passed away. I was able to watch everything that every person in our team does. And it was just absolutely amazing, very professional. Everybody that we encountered was very, very professional, very good, and very knowledgeable. There's no time that any of my siblings or myself reached out to the agency and asked any questions that someone that we spoke to was not able to help us and guide us and tell us. So what I'm going to share with everybody, I hope, is that, before you agree to start with a hospice agency interview, there's wherever you're at, there's likely more than one hospice agency in the area. So, just because you get referred to one agency doesn't mean that that's who you're committed to.
Yeah.
Interview with the people, get to know them, and get real comfortable with them, so that you know that at 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, if you have a question, you need to talk to somebody, you know that you can, in fact, call and ask any questions that you have. Or if someone needs to come out in the middle of the night, that you know that somebody's going to come out. So that's probably setting the ground rules.
Well, when you go into hospice, now I know this is probably a loaded question. How long do people typically last when they go to hospice? And there's a reason
Question.
why I'm well, how long do people usually last when they go into hospice? And there's a reason why I'm like, because people, you mentioned the end of life. Now, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily hours or days. I mean, people go into hospice for an extended period of time, don't they?
Yes. So to answer the question, I mean, we have some people that will be admitted this morning and will have passed this afternoon.
Yeah.
That's some cases. We have some cases that we have people on our hospice service for years. I mean, because they've exhausted all of the treatments that, we pick them up as a patient, and we just continue to care for them until. So it's not necessarily that because you placed on hospice that you're going to pass away in the next 24 hours. Nobody knows when it is. I mean, your doctors may give you an idea that, you may have 6 months to a year. You may have, a week to 2 months. Nobody really knows. It's just an educated guess. And like I said, I mean, we've got people on our agency that they've been patients. I've been seeing them for over 2 years.
Well, I mean, if they're on hospice for over 2 years, that just means that there's no cure for what they have. However, wouldn't it make more sense to go on to palliative care instead of hospice if they have that much time?
I didn't hear if they were doing what?
So palliative care, just in case people aren't familiar with it, there's a difference between palliative care and hospice, right? So palliative care, they're treating pain and discomfort, distress and stuff like that. They're still treating you, even though there's no cure for what you got going on. Whereas hospice really focuses more on quality of life when there's no cure.
Yeah, well, exactly. So again, it's terminal, and you've exhausted all of your treatments that Western medicine can offer you. So again, nobody knows how long you're going to be on the service, and we do have some patients very minimal, but we do have some patients that uh, they do get taken off of hospice. That not that they passed away, but they either I hate to use the phrase of not declining fast enough or whatever, but they're not declining, and so they get taken off of hospice. And depending on if their situation changes, we may pick them back up as a patient again later down the road.
So people come out of hospice because they're not they're not getting worse. So they come out, they graduate, like they're able to get out of hospice.
Well, they are taken off of hospice. I don't want to say that they're no longer terminal or they're no longer declining, but their status, I guess. And look, I'm the chaplain. I'm not the nurse. I'm probably not answering this, properly, but just from experience and things that I've seen and and witnessed, that we do have some patients that will get taken off of hospice and that
Okay.
have not passed away.
So it doesn't automatically mean that you're going to hospice, you get doped up, and it's like an assisted killing.
No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, depending on when you get on the care, uh, whoever does the evaluation, the nurses, and the doctors, of course, whoever refers you to hospice is going to come up with a plan, and the doctors are going to regulate the medication, and they're going to prescribe, whatever it is for that the comfort while you remain in the care. Now, when I talk about medication, it's not medication that's going to cure you, that's going to make you get any better. It's medication that's going to make you comfortable. And there's a lot of family members that are really hesitant because when you start hearing about different medications and different drugs, people get intimidated and they feel like, oh, I don't want to give this to my loved one because this is what's going to kill them. And when you really stop and take a step back, and again, I can use an example for my dad because he was prescribed the same type of medication. And when you stop and you realize that this medication is to keep them comfortable, and we want them as a loved one, we want them to be with us forever, and we want them to be awake, and we want them to be alert, uh, but we don't want them to hurt. And so some of the medication that's prescribed, it does that. It makes them drowsy. It makes them sleep. And so a lot of times the family is hesitant. They don't want to administer this medication because they think that they're contributing to ending their life. And it's just a very small dose of whatever it is, the medication that they're receiving. It's not what's going to end their life any sooner. It's just going to make sure that as long as they're here, they remain comfortable.
So it's not like an excess of opiates or anything like that. It doesn't make them slip into a deeper state of.
No, and like I said, I mean the dosage is depending on what the doctors call. I want to say it's minimal or it's maximal. I don't want to get into that because I'm not a doctor. It's
Yeah.
just it's just a dosage that keeps them comfortable. It keeps them. Sometimes they're kind of drowsy, and um, it's just to keep them comfortable for the time that they have left.
Yeah, no, I get it. So now hospice, they advertise that hospice. Well, I guess one of the advantages, or benefits. I don't know if either of those are. But they advertise that hospice respects your wishes for sure, and although it's not a curative care. It's like you said, dignity and to promote comfort and whatnot. So with them respecting your wishes for care, I mean, to what degree do you see patients? I guess really, do you ever see, because in that state, in that stage of your journey, you start bargaining somehow, especially when Western medicine has surrendered their efforts. Maybe you might try to grasp at other things. And do you see people grasping at other alternatives while they're in hospice, even though their Western medicine options are gone?
No, so here's it's a good question, and so I'm going to try to answer this as best that I can. Again, keeping in mind I'm the chaplain. So just for no, I mean, and I'm saying that because I don't want to misstate something. But so if we get a patient that is on our service for cancer, um, one of the things that the patient and the family understands or is told is that there will not be going to see any more doctors. There will not be any more doctor appointments for whatever your terminal diagnosis is. So you will not be going to see any more. You will not be going to any more doctor appointments for that. But if you're on the care and say you're walking or something, and you sprain your ankle, then your first phone call, you're going to call hospice and let hospice know, and then they're going to guide you and say, well, go to the ER and you're going to get treated. But you're getting treated for something, not the reason you're on hospice.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So you're not, it's not death by a thousand cuts. It's, just because you have a disease that is a terminal diagnosis and they've exhausted all their efforts, um, it doesn't mean that they're going to let you just completely fall apart. like,
No, yeah. So again, uh, whenever a patient comes on the service, someone in the family has a power of attorney, and that's usually one of the first questions that gets asked. Who is the power of attorney? Who is going to be able to make decisions and answer questions, and do what it is the patient has requested. And obviously, the ultimate would be whenever the interview is done, is that the patient does participate in answering those questions that are asked. And so they understand and they know what's going on. Not when I say they, I mean, generally, it's sometimes the patient uh, is in the final stages and they can't answer all those questions, but that's why someone in the family has a power of attorney to answer those questions and make those determinations.
so, so, all right. But do you see maybe so they do still have Western medicine options, just not for the disease that is terminal.
Correct.
Do
That's
you,
correct.
as they continue to get sicker because of that terminal disease, as it pertains to that disease, do you see them grasping at straws or bargaining? I know there's phases that you go through as your journey comes to an end that you start getting right with God. You start uh, you start negotiating a little bit. I mean, I only know this because I did it. So
Right. Yeah.
you know, and I don't know if just because I'm a horrible person that I did it, but I think it's kind of I think that I've heard of other people doing that as well. But I certainly get why, But
So let me share this. So usually when someone comes on service, it takes me a couple of days before I actually, go out and make my initial contact, because when someone gets placed on hospice, it's a big transition, not only for the patient but for the family. And there's a lot of stuff that takes place. You get medical equipment that gets brought in, you get nurses that get to come, and it's just a big process. And we give them some time to transition and kind of get situated. And then when I come in, I just try to meet with the family, meet with the patient, and talk, and just to see where they are spiritually in their lives. The patient and the family. and then kind of just help and answer the questions that they may have. Um, I usually ask what church parish do they belong to, and has their pastor been contacted? Has the patient been anointed? And these are just things that family members don't always think about. And it's like when I start mentioning these things, you can see the light bulb go, oh yeah, we didn't think about that, or no, we didn't do that, or my mom worked for the church parish for 25 years. No, we haven't contacted the church yet. It's like my personal feeling a lot of times is the family members, and the majority of it is the family members, and this is not a hit against them. I understand 100%. I think a lot of times the family feels that once they contact the priest, that's it. They're giving up. Okay, we're going to get the priest.
Well,
We're going to get the priest here. We're going to get the anointing, and that's it. We're giving up. And then what I try to explain to everybody is, no, that's not the case. We want to get the priest involved as early in this process as we can. Get the priest over, come and pray and give the anointing, and you have that many more people praying. But one of the things that it does is, because a lot of times the family will want to wait till the last minute. But if you wait till 10 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to get in touch with the priest, a lot of times it's hard to reach those priests at that time. The offices are closed, and we just don't know when we're going to be able to find a priest. So I always try to encourage the families, as early in the process, get in touch with the priest, so that if you do call at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they're not caught off guard. They kind of know who the patient is because they've been out to visit with them. And it just keeps everybody involved. And I do want to touch on this also, is because since I've been doing this, I have built a pretty good relationship with most of the priests and most of the pastors in my diocese. And when we talk to them in informal settings, a lot of times, because they know I'm a hospice chaplain, and they'll come and say, look, as soon as you get one of the patients, one of my parishioners on hospice, could you give me a call so that we kind of know? And because of HIPAA, I'm not allowed to do that. I can only contact the church parish if the patient or the family member requests, and the family member is, with the power of attorney, that has permission to request, because I cannot discuss any personal information on any of the patients with anyone. And once we explain that to the pastors, they kind of understand. But at the same time, they still want to know, because they want to offer as much prayer and spiritual support as they can.
Yeah. No, you know what? Can I just say, I kind of feel like we glossed over something at the introduction of this topic, and you and I didn't really talk about this, and we really haven't talked about it since it happened, since you were going through it, because I was kind of towards the end of my battle. I kind of was getting good at that time. I was getting healthy, and my energy had shifted, and I was getting better scans, and I feel like I was kind of on the mend a little bit when you got sick. And you kind of played it close to your vest, really. I mean, you didn't really say much about it. You kind of alluded to it for a second. Um, you really kind of glossed over it, and I know we didn't talk about it before. But I mean, can you elaborate a little bit? I think it's important that people hear. You're very, I've known you a long time. You're a very addicted person. Very little faith, and so I know that you live a life of spirituality, and I know that probably played a big role in you facing the battle. I just kind of touch on that a little bit. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but and I know you. I just I thought it was important, and I'm sorry. I just
No, no, it's fine. It's you. I mean, I think you know me well enough to know that it's not about me. It's never about me. But if I can share some information and help somebody else, on their journey, I'd be happy to. So it's going to take a couple of minutes to explain this, and I always give more information than people are looking for. But in order to fully understand, I mean, you really have to get some of this information. So
Tim,
as Kevin stated earlier, I am a Marine.
we have a few minutes to kill. Actually, as it turns out, we're gonna actually burn up some time. So please.
Yeah, yeah. So, so I do go through the VA for my treatment, and it was actually pretty funny because whenever I go to my annual checkup, and the doctor was always asking me, what do you got, and because I don't like to make things about me, I usually just say I'm pretty good, and we just move on. And just for some reason, a couple of years ago when I went in, I just, he was examining me and he asked me if I had anything. I said, I've got a bump on the back of my neck. And I touched it and I showed it to him and he looked at it. He said, that's kind of interesting. So he said, well, let's run some tests. And so, of course, they started running some tests and done a PET scan, a CAT scan. They did whatever kind of scan they could do. And then they sent it off. No, I'm sorry. They decided that they wanted to do a biopsy. And so they brought me in and they did a biopsy. And they kept me overnight. Next morning they came in and they said, look, we sent it off to the lab and well, we checked it before and they said that everything seemed okay, but we sent it off to the lab and we should get some information in a couple of weeks. So I said, okay. Me and my wife come back home and I went back to work. But 2 weeks later, they call me and so I have to drive back and get the results. They got the results in and tell me and my wife, everything looks fine. There's no sign of cancer. There's no anything. Everything looks fine. So of course we were relieved. And so we said, thank you very much. And we left. The hospital is about an hour's drive one way from where I'm at. So we drove home and, we're all excited because everything was good to go. Well, it was kind of weird because exactly 2 weeks after that, I get a phone call while I'm at work in a meeting. And I went outside and I took the call and it was a doctor. He said, hey, this is Dr. So-and-so, and I can't even tell you who he was. But he said, I just want to let you know that, we did send your culture off for a second opinion to a third-party lab, and we just got the results in, and just kind of let you know that you do have cancer. I was like, what? What a phone call, what a mess. I said, you make me drive all the way there an hour to tell me I don't have any signs of cancer, and then you're going to call me and on a phone call and say, it was very, very casual. Oh, by the way, we got the results and you've got cancer. It's like, wow. So, me being me is like, yeah, I didn't really know what to do with that information. And I walked back into the meeting where everyone was at and, they were conducting their business. And I was just sitting there and I didn't want to be disruptive and just tell everybody in the meeting, hey, guess what? I just found out I got cancer. I just kind of sat there and I listened for the rest of the meeting. And then when the meeting finished, I kind of asked my boss, you got a minute? Can I talk to you? And so we went to my boss's office and I shared what I just received. And we were both kind of dumbfounded as to how that information was relayed to me. And in the meantime, so I contacted my wife. Obviously, I let my wife know first, and my kids, and then my boss. And then from there, I was amazed because immediately they scheduled me for another appointment. I went in and they came up with a care plan, and they decided that they was going to treat it with radiation. It was, I want to say, probably very, very, very beginning, stage 1. And they just happened to catch it by accident just because I told them, I got a lump on the back of my neck. And to be honest with you, the bump on the back of my neck is still there. So I don't think it had anything really to do with them finding the leukemia. It wasn't an indication. It wasn't part of it. It's still there. They're not concerned about it. So
Uh,
they set me up for treatments, and I went in and did some radiation treatments.
wow. Well, you know what? It's kind of comical to me. Not comical. This not comical, but to me, the irony behind it is you were, in my eyes, you were the absolute warrior in my eyes, and you were the epitome of what a Marine should be. You were the poster board Marine to me, and the example to follow. And I just think that you were a warrior before you got sick. So you kind of had a head start here. You didn't have to build yourself into a warrior. But you touched on a few things just in that explanation there about your wife and your family. You discussed it with them first. Then you went to your work, and it sounds like you're circling the wagons in that
Yeah.
and then you devised a plan with your doctor. You indicated you had a treatment plan. So you circled the wagons, you devised a plan, and then you put it into effect. And that's what it sounds to me that you just explained. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here.
No, yeah, exactly. They came up with a plan. I mean, at that point, it's beyond me because I'm just a guy, and that's their profession. Uh, and they gave me some very good information to help me to make my decisions. Um, and they gave me some options that I could, instead of having to drive an hour, for the treatments, they gave me some options for doctors that would be local here, and I could have just received the treatment here. But as I stated earlier, when we was discussing about the hospice, when you interview your hospice people, it's got to be people that you're comfortable with. And when this doctor came in and started explaining to me, what the situation was and what the recommendation was, and the whole process, I just felt very, very good, very comfortable, and I felt like I was in really good hands. So I just kind of looked at my wife and I said, yeah, because they wouldn't ask me to make a decision right there on the spot. They wouldn't put me on the spot, but they would say, look, you can take your time and make a decision, but we would like to get started on this treatment, as soon as we possibly can. So I looked at my wife right there while we in the room, and of course she said it was my decision, my choice, whatever. And I said, yeah. I said we're just going to go with what treatment that you're going to do and be in charge of it. And so that's what we did. I was really comfortable and very happy
Yeah.
that we went with that.
Some people, they want to get a second opinion or a third opinion or a fourth opinion. I was one of those people. So I went to to Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, and I I blindly followed the whole thing, the regimen, the systemic treatment that they offer you, and it was their gold standard of treatment and everything. But when it got down to towards the latter part of the battle, um, they were telling me stuff I didn't like to hear. They were giving up or whatever. So I got a second opinion from MD Anderson out in Houston, Texas, and then I got a third opinion from Sloan Kettering up in New York, and then I got a fourth opinion from Mayo Clinic, and then I got a fifth opinion from John Hopkins. So turns out all these guys went to school together, or they were in the fellowship together, did the residency together. All these doctors know each other. So you're really not getting an independent opinion unless you have like a generational gap or something like that. You're really getting like a fraternity. I actually had a conference call with two of the doctors, and they started talking. Oh yeah, you went to school, and yeah, you were over there in the West Wing of the oh yeah, And I'm like, hey, can we talk about,
Yeah.
so it's important that, when you're considering all these different opinions and this and that, you're wasting time in the meantime. But you got to
Right.
feel good about who you're talking to. Know who
Right.
you're in the room with, and either you trust them or you don't.
Yeah, it's really important. And so, when they do the PET scan and the CT scan and they do all these things, I'm a pretty brave guy, but until it comes to these, scans and they put you in this machine and it just, you know, when I say it terrifies me, it's not that I'm afraid of the process or the procedure. I'm just not in control. You got to lay there. You can't move, and that's the portion of it. It's like I always feel that whenever they're doing a scan, I always feel like I'm going to move at the wrong second, and then they got to start all over again. Um, and when it started, because it was in my tonsil, they had to do a scan of my head, which is what goes in the machine, and that's the part that I don't like. It's like if they got to scan my body, or but once your head gets in there, it's like it's really
Yeah.
kind of freaky. So I want to share this. So
Well,
the very
sorry,
first time I
someone
went,
ask you if you're claustrophobic or something.
no, and I don't know if I would categorize it as a claustrophobic. I don't know. It's more of the fact of just not being able to move.
Yeah.
So this may help answer. So when I went for the very first scan, not the treatment, but the scan. So because it was in my tonsil, you lay on this little table, and the guy that did it, I felt bad for him because he knew I was nervous, he knew I was scared, and he kept telling me, "It's okay, man." He said, "We're gonna get this done as fast as possible. It's good." And he explained every step of the way what he was gonna do, and this is important for anyone that's going to go through this. So you're laying on this table, and he's telling me, he said, "Look," and he was probably 5 or 6 feet away from me, not very far, but far enough. And he had this machine, and he's telling me, he said, "Look, I'm going to take this stuff and I'm going to lay it over your head," and I'm like freaking out, like what? And what is it's like a mesh, and I say it's like bread dough, really. And it comes out of the machine, they put it, and it's warm, it's not hot, it's warm to the touch, and they lay it, and it covers your entire head, and they molding it to make a mask. So it covers probably your upper chest and all of your head and ears, and then he molds it. And then as he's molding, he's there, he's talking to me. As long as somebody's in the room talking to me or touching me, I'm okay. But it's like, and then he's like, "Look, this is gonna take about, I think he said 5 or 10 minutes, because once it gets molded, it's got to cool off so it can harden." And so what happens is once they're doing this,
Can I? I'm sorry. Can
yeah,
I
go
say
ahead.
something? Now, I don't know if you're familiar, but maybe we never talked about this before, but I kind of alluded to the fact earlier in this broadcast here that you're kind of like a superhero to me, and now you're telling me that you're afraid of dark, and that, well, I didn't want to. It was restricted. Come on,
Yeah,
come on.
yeah. And so every time I go for treatment or anything like that, they know it. It's like, "Look," I said, "I can leap tall buildings and a single bound, and whatever, but I said, I'll take a bullet. I'll protect you. I'll do everything I can. But here, I'm at your mercy." And so to make it even, I guess, a little bit more interesting is once the thing gets molded and it gets hardened, they got clips in it, and they clip it to the table, so you can't move. And obviously, you can't move because when you're receiving the radiation treatment, it's very specific on where they're going to treat. So they put it where it's very tight around your head, so you cannot move. And so he's got to make sure that he's got those clips in the right spot. And then after that's all done, he takes it off, and you leave. And then when you come back and you start the treatments, it goes into another room, and they put the mask on you and they clip it to the table. It's like, phew,
Now,
man.
now, I've always wondered this because I didn't have that, right? Because obviously mine was down in my GI area, so I didn't have to get molded for anything or whatever. But when I was going through radiation treatment, I always used to see these things like on the counter or whatever from the person who was in front of me, on the machine in front of me, and I would always wonder where the hell do they store those things? Like, I mean, because you don't bring it home, right? Those
No, they keep it there.
and they're specific to each patient. Like they're
Right.
molded specifically to you. So, boy, they gotta have some sort of an inventory place or a storage facility for all these things, and then they have to have it on hand when you get there. So
Yeah.
I mean, a place with a huge institution like Moffitt or wherever, there's thousands and thousands of people with one of those molds. Where do they keep them? I don't know.
Like you said, when I got there, it was in the room. When I left, it was in the room. I don't know where they put it between, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know, or maybe they just wait for the GI, the next guy, is getting a knee X-ray or whatever,
yeah.
and they
So I
just
will tell you this: when I was finished, when I got my last treatment, and when I walked out and I got to ring the bell, they gave it to me. They said, "Here you go. You can have this." So I did get to keep it.
it's like you should put it on mounted on the wall like a deer
That's
head.
my little buddy.
Yeah, like just
So and I know that we talked about the doctor with the treatment, and I know we talked about all of the schooling and everything that these people go through. But I will tell you this: the man, the nurse, whoever he was that made the mold, very very good guy, very good. The technicians that did the actual radiation treatment. Now, whenever they did the treatment, the doctor was there. After the initial time I met with the doctor, uh, and when I came to get the mask fitted, she was there. I never saw her again.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
always the technicians that when I went in, they came in, they set me up, they put the mask on, they went behind this big gigantic wall, and they did their thing. And
yeah.
I never, she was always there. She was in that room with them, but I never saw her talk to her.
Yep.
It was those technicians that never get acknowledged for everything that they do.
Yeah, no, I used to question my doctor because she'd be gone before I got up and got dressed and walked out. Like she'd
Yeah.
be gone already, and I would say, did you? I don't know if you were here last time, but last time I did this and that or whatever. And she's like, "Who do you think's in the room doing it?" When you,
Yeah.
she's like, "I move on to the next patient or whatever. I do it and then I move, and you're just slow getting out, I guess."
Yeah. Yeah. You just it's part of the assembly line, and it's
Yeah.
it's how it is. Yeah.
So and
And
that
as long as when I'm the one on the table, the person doing it, it could be the janitor. It doesn't matter. As long as that person that's doing it is qualified and they know what they're doing, I'm okay.
I would argue that maybe the janitor might not be qualified, but
Yeah.
it's crazy because people question the Western medicine. Oh well, does chemo work? Does chemo not work? Does this work? Does that not work? Whatever. But one thing I never really hear anybody questioning is radiation, and
Yeah.
radiation is a very calculated, precise thing. And I've never heard anybody say, "Oh, radiation doesn't work." So it's almost as if those aren't even aren't even like in the same category as the trial and error of the the actual medical oncology field. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make sense. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, because like you said, it's very pinpoint because when they make the mask, they mark it, and there's a spot exactly where they're going to do the treatment. It's marked on that mask,
yeah.
and when the machine comes, it comes around this way, and then comes back this way.
Now, did you
And
get tattoos?
sorry,
Did you get tattoos for the
no,
radiation?
no, I did not. No,
They
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 just
they marked the
they
mask.
just made them. They made a mark on that mask. They
Yeah.
made a mark on the mask, and that was their aiming
Yeah.
point.
See, I didn't have a mask, so they tattooed my body, and I made it through the entire Marine Corps without getting a tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then I ended up getting cancer, and they put these little polka dots on me. And
Yeah.
because I went through radiation more than once, they had to redo my radiation tattoos several times. So I got
Yeah.
like a bunch of freckles. Like I think I got like 15 different radiation tattoos, I think.
No, I'm
But
still tattoo free.
yeah, well, you know what? I mean, I try to say no, I don't have any tattoos, but you
Yeah.
know what? Now they're like battle scars, so I don't really mind so much, you know. But I I thought I was like the only guy to ever get through the Marine Corps without getting a tattoo, but
Yeah.
I don't
But
know. So, but you know what? I think that man, I think that there's so much more to talk about with you, and I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface here with the hospice topic, you know. But
right.
if we're being honest, I mean, I don't really. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, you know. And I mean, I've done a few episodes now with the Warrior Wednesday thing that I'm intentionally breaching topics that people don't really want to talk about. And
Right.
you know, and I think that the hospice was well, I kind of felt like I personally vilified it, and I don't think that's fair, you know. And so I just wanted to kind of circle back and make sure that we set the record straight, that there's more.
Yeah,
It's,
and not, not to cut you off, but just to elaborate is, that's one of the things I say all the time is, there's just so many people not informed enough about what hospice is, what hospice does. And if I run into somebody and we have a conversation, we talk about it, the first thing most people will say is, I wish I would have known that when my mom got sick or when my dad was, at the end, you know. And it's just like that. I don't have the answer. I just wish hospice was uh, hospice information was more available, and when it was presented, more people would listen.
well,
I've
some
gone
people.
to some different groups and I've given some talks on it. And at the end of the talk, people will come up to me and say, "Man, I just thank you for that information, but I want to." And a lot of times is I want to make sure my family knows this information so that when it comes time for me, they know where to go, they know what to do.
Yeah.
And because it's becoming, I want to say it's becoming more accepted, I guess. It doesn't have that big stigma that it used to, because as the more we talk about it, the more educated people become, and then it's a tool. It just becomes a tool, just like anything else.
Yeah. And I think it's very important that people are their own advocate. Like I tell people all the time, in your battle, especially when going through Western medicine, you have to be your own advocate. And when you lose the ability to be your own advocate, somebody in that support system needs to become your advocate. And
Exactly.
it's hard enough to be your own advocate, let alone being the advocate for somebody else.
Yep.
So because of that, it's like a recipe for well, misinformation. It's a recipe. I don't even like using that word misinformation, but it's a stigma. It's a stigma, we should say. That stigma remains because nobody wants to be somebody else's advocate, especially when
Yeah.
there's zero chance of it going the right way. Well, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
that. There may
Yeah.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
so where there's life, there's hope, right? So I just I shouldn't have said that, but
And I'll even throw this in. After we've had a patient, and we've been able to interact with the family and the patient, and with the care that they receive, it's just so rewarding when the families reach out to you after their loved one has passed, and the families reach out and they're very thankful, because most of the time it's like, we were all hesitant to do this, but we're so glad that we did it. It was the right thing to do. And, our loved one was very well cared for. And it was a personal person, because, as just like, you talk about when the doctors are having conversations and reminiscing from when they were in school or whatever. But when we get in with a family, it's like it becomes personal, becomes, we become friends with these people. And when they go through a loss, we really feel that loss along with them, because we care for them, and we want to help as much as we possibly can, emotionally, spiritual, and meet them where they are.
Yeah, yeah. No, I, I, you're doing God's work. There's just, I wish I could say, that you're doing the work of a noble Marine, or I wish I could say that you're doing,
Yeah.
you, I, I mean, this has nothing to do with you being a warrior. It has nothing to do with your personal battle with cancer. It has nothing to do with you being a Marine. Just you walking the walk. That's that's huge. I mean, you are sitting, you're holding the hand, you're praying with, you're providing hope, you're providing comfort, you're providing counsel. You are living each and every person's battle at the wrong time of their battle.
Yeah.
And
And I'll tell you, sometimes a, a lot of a lot of the families will tell you that they feel guilty because, look, I haven't been to church, and I said, I'm not here to judge. When this patient or whatever can no longer go to church or whatever, guess what? Jesus is sending me to you, to be with you at this time. And when I go to visit, it's not just, I'm not just going there, and offer some prayers and whatnot, but it's getting in there, getting in the dirt and getting dirty, and getting to know these people, and and really, really walking with them. Because a lot of times, and the patients are, they get scared, and they're unsure, and then the family's unsure, and so you have to reassure them. But one of the things I tell them all the time is I learn way more than the families and the patients than I could ever teach. And it's and when you say, you're doing the work of God, and I'll tell you that, when I wake up in the morning, and I've got patients to go see today or tomorrow or whatever, and I've got an idea on where I'm going to go, uh, and then when I'm making my schedule for the day, it may change, and instead of going one direction, I'll go someplace else, and I'll find out that day or the next day or whatever, the patient I wasn't scheduled to go see today, when I went, they passed. So it's like, yeah, I'm not working for me. I don't I don't pick and choose. When I make my schedule to go visit the patients and the families, it's because you know
yeah,
I get a
I will tell you, I want this conversation makes me want to completely do an entire other episode about when when the when the person that is the one that everybody leans on, when where does that person turn when they need to lean on somebody, and it's got to be God, because I don't know how many more people are bigger than you, to me. I mean, it's got to be God. Who else could you?
oh, absolutely, yeah,
You
absolutely,
know,
yeah.
you're pretty big deal to me. So who else could you possibly lean on other than your wife or God, or I mean, it's got to be somebody bigger than you, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit. It's very interesting, and it's almost sad, because I wonder when you got sick, and we got a whole nother thing to talk about here. Who do you lean on? When you're going through it, So that's a tough one, So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, I want to. Hey, we'll go ahead and end this topic here, and we'll circle back for a whole nother conversation. So let me close this thing out. Don't go anywhere for a second, and I'm going to come back to you. But I let me close this episode out just by